today we are discussing management of change in organizations. So, we will cover this to understand how change becomes an important aspect of managing. Organizations themselves need change and also development, like the organisms. They go through the natural evolutionary processes. And so, the cycle of birth, identity formation, growth, maturity, decline, and of course, then the final death is inevitable in an organism. But in an organization, if we manage it properly, then perhaps this last phase need not come and we can really manage change and develop an organization to overcome perhaps the last process. Okay. And if we don't do that, then things will become obsolete and perhaps we will not be able to cope up with the competition, and hence our organization may decline to almost this level. So, change becomes extremely important process and you can't control, or you have no choice to say that I don't want change, because it is inevitable. And in today's lecture we are going to discuss why, how and what of organizational change. So, we begin with what is organizational change, the nature, different types, then we will go on to discuss how organization change could be managed, and finally we will try to look at some case studies. So, people comprise not merely of the bodies of human being, but also as minds and the liabilities, skills, attitudes, interactions and the like. And they are the great assets of organizations. We have seen that in our earlier chapters. So, goals, techniques, structures and people are all interrelated. A change in goals require change in the techniques, structure and people. In a narrow sense, we can say that organizational change refers to a change in many of the aforesaid components, goals, techniques, structures and people. However, we have to realize that sometimes it is a planned change, sometimes it is a natural change, sometimes you like it, sometimes you don't like it. Nevertheless, we have to manage change to really manage our organization successfully. So, need for change is because of the adjustment to the environmental change. Environment is changing and every day there are so many new aspects of environment. Unless we adjust to those, we will not be able to really manage our organization very successfully. We have to survive within those challenges of the organization and the world of competitions. We have to grow and expand, hence there is change. We have also to keep internal balance internal balance of people, the work designs, policies, and so on. We have to also look at the some kind of a antidote to employee adjustment and frustration. Well, we won't like people to be frustrated, but then because there are individual differences, we have seen that again, in some of our earlier discussions. Organization has to make certain adjustments and certain changes. Kurt Lewin, a behavioral scientist, he has given us ideas about how to analyze and go about managing change. And so basically he is talking about behavioral change. And he is suggesting that change management to be effective, we must involve 3 related changes experienced by individuals or groups. These are unfreezing, changing, and refreezing. These are the 3 terms Kurt Lewin used, which we are learning and perhaps we are practicing as the process of management development and change. So let us see what does that mean. Unfreezing means realizing the ineffectiveness of the present behavioral patterns and being ready to learn new behavior and change for the better. Changing is the actual implementation of the change process, and it is experiencing with new behavioral, new skill, and new machinery, and so on. So many other things we can talk about. The list is much longer than what we are trying to talk about here. Rephrasing means acceptance and reinforcement of the new behavior pattern so that it becomes a part of the normal method of work. There are number of models which have explained how to manage change, and one of the models is the action research model. Action research model suggests that number of steps have to be followed, and these are problem identification, consultation with experts, data gathering, and preliminary diagnosis, feedback, joint diagnosis of the problem, joint action planning, action, data gathering after action, and then managing change. So this has been given by Cummings and Hughes, which we are using often when we are trying to manage change. Broadly, there are number of types of organizational changes. Change could be a natural change, it could be a reactive change, or it could be a proactive or planned change strategy. You understand? Natural change, reactive change, and proactive or planned change. We'll see what do we mean by these change strategies. Natural change, you can see here we are talking about a natural change, natural situation. Okay. Here I have tried to put in some definition of natural change. What could be reactive change? Could you suggest some examples of reactive change? We are talking about the natural change. Well, a child grows, becomes an adult. Natural change, an organization becomes old, and perhaps the managerial thinking has not changed. Therefore, the change which is happening is because of time. But if you find that people are reacting, then it is a reactive change because of certain changes in the environment or the organization. So, natural change, perhaps it's very easy for you to understand that which are the gradual natural changes, inevitable, and we have to design our strategies for coping up with the natural change, about which is not very difficult for us because we can see the natural change around, and perhaps we can design our system to cope up with natural change. So, some form of over a period of time, we are talking about this process of natural change. Reactive change, as the example I was trying to give you, that employees might react because of certain reasons, and that situation we have to manage because change and the expectation of participants in the organization is because of certain situation. So, this type of change we can see managers, they have to actually manage because of certain symptoms of the problem which might arise in course of day-to-day working. I've already given you one example of this, and so they react, and manager has to adopt to some of these measures in some of these situations. In other words, we can say that the origin of reactive change is reaction to a particular problem or certain pressures in organizations. So, you may say that in my organization I don't want any reactive change, but the choice is not with us. Choice is not with the managers. This is inevitable and part of managing an organization. Planned change strategy or planned change, this is when you anticipate certain changes, okay, certain issues, certain failures, and then you design a system to use that particular kind of a change before the event has occurred. Okay? Before the event has occurred, before actual agitation has happened, or before frustration took place, we make a strategy of change in such a way that the event, that kind of event perhaps does not come in most of the cases. I am not saying 100% cases, because we are talking about a dynamic world. Human beings, society, organizations, all are the dynamic entities. So, we can't talk about all 100% cases at one particular point of time. Yet, we are trying to analyze that what is in the offing and can we manage that. Okay? So, here you can see what we understand by the planned change. What are the forces of change? Number of forces are there, and some of these are the factors and some of the circumstances which affect organizations, and these change almost continuously affect the organization. So the forces of change could be understood as external forces or internal forces. Okay? External to the organization and internal in the organization. Let us see what do we mean by internal and external forces. So let us first see the external forces. External forces lie in the external environment of an organization, and they may be classified as some of the forces, such as educational and cultural forces, spread of education, changes in the system of education, patterns of culture, and so on. These could be economic forces, shortage of certain vital resources, rapid growth of population, market demands, increase of competition, expansion of transport, etc., and many others which have the economic impact. We have technological forces, new techniques of production, improvement of an existing resource, discovery of new machines, new systems. Okay. So these are some of the technological forces which make impact on organizations, and we have to manage these. There are also political forces. Change of government, for example, change of policies of the existing government, shift in trade union activities, etc. Many a times, because of change in the government policies, you will find that the management strategy has to gear up with that. So you wish to make certain changes, and you find that there may be difficulty in making this adjustment to these forces. We will talk about resistance to change in a short while from now, because that becomes an important factor when we are trying to manage change. The other external forces are social forces, changes in the mode of living, habits and customs, urbanization, speed of provincialism, we can say, or racialism, we can say. All these are also important forces, external forces, which impinge on the organizational functioning. External forces could also be understood as globalization and government policies. Government policies we have already discussed, but here it's in the larger perspective. I am talking about globalization and the policies related to that. So we have to all survive. We have to survive in the globalized economy, and there's so much competition. There are so many changes. And if we don't cope up with that, our organization will not survive. The competition in the globalized market also creates, need for proactive kind of preparedness, proactive change, because of certain reasons. Okay. So it's not only the reactive change that you may be dealing with. Okay. For example, the car industry, we have the old car industry and the ambassador car. They have geared up themselves with new technology, so the new systems, to cope up with the competition. Even though their external, for example, look may remain the same, but in terms of their machinery and the technical aspects, they have managed proactively. And so you still find the good cars running in competition within your generation cars. Political factors are also important. So international policies also affect the trade that you have, the kind of business that you have. For example, the kind of today, I'm sure all of you read newspapers and you are aware of some of the trades and some of the policies and the kind of export and the import and the kind of competition we have with some countries which was never there, say about 15-20 years ago, it was not there. So, so we have to see that how some of the political factors also make difference, in this sense. Also, the external forces, when we are talking about the countries receive various status of some kind of a favored nations, so that that also might affect the organization, your business. Then, some of the other economic forces are the current forces of, say, other countries, say East West Germany or some countries or WTO agreements and things like that. And so we have to be knowledgeable in terms of the product, the services covered under all these. Only then if you are in a business that gets affected because of these. So you and your organization has to understand, be knowledgeable and gear up for these kinds of changes which which are in the offing. We have changed a lot of things, okay. So your organization has to manage some of these, and of course some of the technological changes could be information communication technologies, as you have seen, which have really shrunk the distance between organization and the countries. And the choice of appropriate technology is the key to managing change. And so in the competitive business, you have to see what is the best technology for you, the most appropriate one. And the technology, as we know, gets obsolete very soon. And so what should you do about that? And changing customer needs, a preference that customers might show you for a particular type of product. Say sometimes you find that there is some fashion, some fad, and because of which certain products are being sold in the market like hotcakes, and other maybe very valuable products might be kept just in the backside. So you have to also look at the customer needs. Say for example, if we take up if you are a garment manufacturer, then you have to see that what are the fashionable designs which are going on. Okay, so in the management of change, you have to keep in mind the customer needs as well. So organization and work design, you have to see the emergence of various BPO sectors and various other redesigns of organizations because of technological requirements, because of the social requirements, because of customer choices, and so on. And so effects of all these factors which we have discussed could be observed in the organization, in the organizational structure, design, systems and processes, tasks, technology, and above all on the psychological contract of people. Okay, these are all the external, these are some of the forces which we have looked at. Now we'll go through internal forces. These were internal forces in the organization which are important for management of change. So the internal forces, these are the pressures arising within their organizations, and they include the composition and policy of top management. That means you as a manager, you have to be careful about the kind of policies that you are developing. Changes of personnel due to retirement, resignation, promotions, transfers, and so on. This is in our selection process, and in other chapters also we have referred to some of these processes. Changes in the physical facilities like shortage of supplies of raw material, wearing out of machinery, equipment, and demand for more space. Changes in the employee attitudes, feelings, and aspirations. At a very micro level, we have to understand that people are important, and their attitudes, their feelings are extremely important, because these are also related to their motivational background. What we have done earlier in one of the lectures about motivating people. So we have to be extremely careful and sensitive about these issues. Changes in work allocation, duty hours, composition of work groups, and so on. Then the internal forces also refer to system dynamics. Okay, dynamic interrelationships that we have between technology, dominant groups, internal politics, interpersonal relationships, attacking the alignment, and may damage some situation and might call for change. So might manage might manage the situation without managing the change. We can't do that. So we have to manage change at this level. Then the structure focus changes that we have, downsizing and decentralization, made to reduce the cost and increasing the productivity and efficiency of the organization. Yeah, we are talking about internal factors now within your organization, within your industry. Yes. And also we have to look at number of other factors. So in the internal forces, I've just tried to put one small example, the case study of Bata India, the management of Bata India, which has made certain changes and offering the voluntary retirement schemes, and they have number of employment possibilities that they have tried to look into, and they have made certain changes and implemented certain financial and other operational restructuring changes in their organization. So in the internal changes, we are also discussing the technological changes like upgradation of the existing technology, inadequacy of the administrative processes, requirement of the change of rules, procedures, revision of organizational goals and objectives. Then individual group expectations, person forced focus changes. That means changes in HRD, what we are meaning here. Then the resource constraints requiring drastic changes, profitability issues like loss of revenue, and related factors, for example, the market shares and the low productivity, etc. So, the internal changes, the internal factors which affect the change is we can sort of put them into the brief caption saying employee needs, expectations. These are some of the factors, and here I have tried to prepare a table. In fact, this we have borrowed from one of the writings with certain perhaps changes, that how the forces of changes, internal and external, are functioning. And so, this is basically a repetition of what I have already discussed with you, the external changes all types and the internal changes of all types. Okay. So, have you understood the internal and the external change which we have to manage in an organization in order to become effective, in order to survive, in order to become profitable? Okay. So I won't repeat all this because we have already discussed this. Then we move on to look at the issue of resistance to change. The change process, whenever you are wanting to change from one situation to the other situation, there is resistance. Resistance of people because of so many reasons, and there could be some overt reasons or some covert resistance. There could be some conscious versus some unconscious resistance to change. So, resistance to change, this is a tendency to resist change among organization members, and the reason for such resistance may be many, and some of those we are trying to present here. Okay, resistance to change, this may be because of habit, this may be because of uncertainty, this could be about self-interest, this could be about unwillingness to give up existing benefits, this could be about misunderstanding and lack of trust. And so, the resistance of change could be because of many reasons. So, we can see that the belief that we have about certain things, or different for example, description of need might affect the change, and we might no agreement, there may be need for change, lack of belief, there may be need for change, no consideration for any kind of a issue in the manner of change. So, there may be many issues on resistance to change, and some of these could be rational factors, could be non-rational factors, could be political factors, could be management factors when we are looking at resistance to change. When people resist change, there are many personal factors also. For example, if you are very comfortable in a situation, you won't like any change in that situation, because you may have sometimes fear of unknown, because you are very happy doing whatever you are doing. So, if you are now taking up another, or if you are transferred to another department, you might start fearing that maybe I am not very comfortable there. You do not know, you may be more comfortable there, and an organization perhaps is planning it in such a way that you are more comfortable there, you are more perhaps productive there. But once you are transferred, you might have resistance and you might feel unhappy about it. But moment you have been placed there and you have to go there, After couple of days perhaps you start adjusting to that situation, and you may feel better than your earlier department. So, resistance to change also has to be managed very carefully by the manager, because sometimes say when I say the rational factors, non-rational factors, when I am saying that there is a fear of unknown, you are not taking any rational decision there. Okay. Sometimes fear of imbalance. I am very balanced, very comfortable. I am coming at this time, sitting at this place, doing this work. These are my duties. But I'll feel disturbed. So I will have some imbalance. My equilibrium perhaps will get affected. That kind of a feeling is there. Sometimes some social factors like the political factors may be there, some management factors are there. But all these factors basically are in the minds of people, and so manager has to really manage resistance to change very carefully. And some of the methods we are going to discuss, and we have already discussed in some other chapters in some other contexts. So, maybe I will try to bring some of those in today's discussion as well. So, we have to overcome the resistance, and number of methods have been suggested by various researchers and authors, and 6 general methods of overcoming resistance to change have been suggested by Cotter and his associates, which we are discussing. These are education and communication. You can manage change if you educate people, communicate very clearly with them. Using participation and involvement. In fact, I was talking to you about participation issue, which when we were discussing participative management at that point, we also mentioned to you that participative management could be a great perhaps asset to us in managing change, resistance to change. At that time we were discussing. So, participative management and involving people in decision making could be another method of managing resistance to change. We can have the facilitation and support. We can have negotiation and agreement, manipulation and cooperation, explicit and implicit coercion. Sometimes this may be needed, even though not recommended as a routine strategy. And so, reducing resistance to change, perhaps we can have the analysis in terms of strategy, which depends on the situation, education and communication, participation and involvement, facilitation and support, negotiation and agreement. I am repeating the same points here in the form of a table to make you understand that we can manage resistance to change. Okay, and this perhaps the skilled manager has to develop if he or she wants to become a good manager. So, management of change is more comprehensive process of which planning is an important part. Okay. When you want to manage change, you could plan out the planned change strategy for yourself formally, or sometimes just in your mind. But it is good if there is a large scale change that we are trying to bring about, then it is better that we do it very formally. And so, the process of planning becomes very important. Organization of change And this is done through a change agent who may be a member of a team of members of the organization or outside consultants. This is followed by action which involves intervention and reorientation. Monitoring is necessary to ensure that plan proceeds according to original design. Okay? Now we are talking about how to manage change. Once having understood that what is change and then what are different types of changes, what are the forces of change, the resistance to change, we are now looking at managing change as to what should we do about managing change. Okay, so this is followed by some action which involves intervention and reorientation. Monitoring is necessary to ensure that a plan proceeds according to certain designs. This we have already discussed. Yes, are there any questions? Yes. Yeah, so we can do it in a very formal way. Yes. Yeah. So we can do that in that formal way. So change may cause disturbance and and people might sometimes get disturbed, and so the existing order gets affected when you are trying to make change. So we have to be careful about that. Support is required for proper implementation. Support from all quarters, all participants. Yeah. So briefly, management of change then implies making a program and a plan. So now I am talking about if you are wanting to manage change, then step by step what should we do? Making a program or a plan, intervention by a change agent, monitoring, dealing with adverse consequences, support, organizational culture and empowerment, changing organizational culture, work culture, and empowering employees in your organization. Okay? And so the resource dependence of change becomes important. Let us see, to survive, organization needs to acquire resources from the environment. And so we have to see that how we are able to really coordinate the resources. Organizations try to reduce this dependence on the environment by adopting a sense of strategies and the attempts to influence and control the environment. Because you have your organization which is there within an environment, and the resource dependence also is there. We can't say that my organization doesn't have any resource dependence. So the internal strategies aimed at adapting and changing the organization to fit the environment, these are important, and the external strategies are aimed at changing the environment to fit the organization. So whatever way be the way we are trying to manage the change process, we have to be very careful about these strategies. The internal strategies of change further will talk about that what is the for example the choice that you have, the domain choice that you have, and what's the strategy that you are using for the analysis of uncertainty that might happen in your organization. You can talk about the recruitment, appointment of people from external organizations. Sometimes very consciously we try to get the best person from some other organization. Then environmental scanning, maybe that's also important, and maybe we are using the environmental scanning for trends, for any kind of a change, any kind of a patterns that we would like to use, and we are using that to sensitize the organization and to make some kind of anticipatory changes for which we have to really prepare. We have to prepare, yes, in the organization. So environmental scanning also becomes very important. Further, when we are discussing the internal change strategies, the strategy for safeguarding the organization's production process from fluctuations to demand, and having many suppliers, these are some of the examples, or maintaining inventory preventive maintenance, or offering discounts. Some of these are the strategies that we might use, which many companies are already using. So some of these, you might feel that there is what's new about it. Okay, some of the companies are already using this, but we are also learning. And when you learn in a very systematic way, maybe sometimes you can make better use of the information that's given to you. So that teaching learning process becomes important sometimes, even though some practitioners are already doing it. Yeah. So the external strategies that we have, these are the geographical analysis, of relocating the organization. That may be a strategy, or there may be say it may be relocation in India itself or in a different country. So you might use some of those strategies because of the cost, or because of some such reasons, you might decide about it, or the customers or the markets. Many organizations are coming to India because sometimes they feel that India is a big market for certain things because of the population that we have. I'll call that as the human resources. And so many companies are coming here to establish business. So that's one of the strategies for the external strategy, we can say. Then advertising, enhancing some kind of a visibility for yourself is important. And also we are talking about contracting, establishing the contracts. You can have also the different strategies like the mergers, and or maybe you have the subcontracting or certain such issues, okay, which will help you overcome the issue of uncertainty also. So we are also talking about co-opting or inducting some experts or some people with experience, with reputation, and this could also be a strategy for management of change. Also we are talking about some other strategies like We can talk about involving people, the joint ventures and things like that, the strategic alliances, or sometimes also lobbying. That could also be one of the factors which some organizations already use and could be used. But we have to use all that, with proper thinking and rethinking and proper strategic design. Yes. So one really needs to have a recap of things already perhaps known also, because you have to rethink about the situation, the circumstances, the environment, and only then decide about a particular mode of action. So the drivers of organizational transformation are, you can see the external environment, the mission and strategy of your organization, leadership, culture, systems, climate, task requirements, and the individual skills, individual needs and values, motivation, individual and organizational performance. These are the drivers of organizational transformation, and so we have to very carefully look into all these drivers. I will not repeat all these drivers in great details, because we have discussed all these in some of the earlier discussions in the earlier chapters. So I am not repeating these once again. If there are any questions, maybe I will take the questions. Otherwise, we go to the next part of today's lecture. Yes. Yes, in the chapter on motivation, participation, yeah, we have discussed some of those issues, yes. So the role of leadership, very briefly I thought I'll just touch upon one major aspect, the role of leadership. All of us understand now, we have done leadership, and we have looked at the leaderships of many types, and we have seen that the autocratic leadership doesn't work perhaps anymore unless that is a very emergent situation, and number of other factors we have discussed. In addition to that, we had our discussion on the participatory leadership, empowering leadership, which perhaps will also be related to transformational leadership. So if you want to really manage change, transformational leadership is the best type of leadership style that you will have to prepare yourself with. Then you could manage change very effectively to the best benefit of your organization and perhaps yourself. So, to get you thinking, I am talking to you about that, can you really cite some of the examples about some famous case on the management of change in organizations in the light of the discussions that we have had. So you can identify some of the issues about why, what and how of management of change in the organization that you wish to analyze. At this point, let me give you an analogy that how change happens, how change occurs, and then what happens. Say you are standing near a silent pond and you put a pebble there. I'm sure as a child you must have played like that, and there are ripples. Okay, these ripples are small, okay, and then become larger and larger and larger. So this is a change process which creates ripples in your organization. Another pebble you put, again ripples. Again there are there are reactions. So every moment perhaps there is a pebble in that silent pond, and the ripples are there. And then finally you can see that these ripples get larger and larger, get intermingled, and give rise to then again in a few ripples. So like that silent pond, we cannot remain silent, like the pond cannot remain silent, and the ripples are there, and we have seen the nature of these ripples as a change process in the earlier discussion, as the internal factors, external factors, the forces that you have in the organization. Yes. So the process of change we have discussed, and at this point we have to remember when I say you get into thinking and giving you an assignment to prepare a case study for yourself about management of change. So we have to understand at this point that management of change is an inevitable aspect of managing. Whether you like it or not, change is coming, and very few organizational changes will be really static changes. These will all be dynamic. Most of these, I'm saying, most of these will be dynamic changes. And dynamic, that means if one element changes, it has impact on the other elements also. Why? Because the individual mind is a dynamic entity, society is dynamic entity, and organization too is dynamic. So when you are trying to manage an organization, you must not forget that one of the important factors is management of change, for which the inputs we have given in the earlier lectures. Now before we close, I'll just talk to you about another case study, the IBM story. Very briefly, let me just try to make you understand that how an organization managed change and how effectively that achieved success and results. So we move on to the IBM story. Now you can see that IBM, one of the top IT player, there was a time when there was a requirement for change, and very quickly I'm going through this IBM story, okay, not reading and narrating every line of what I'm saying. You can look at the aspects of the IBM story, yeah, and how it changed itself, and then in the competition it has really survived. So in the IBM story, okay, it was manufacturing light, perhaps some of the equipment that it had been manufacturing, okay, and so the computer and the other things, as you know, the history of the company, okay, and there were many competitors also, so there were many vendors also for the microprocessor based the PC company, and here these PCs were liberated from the mainframe computers at that time. I'm talking about, long time ago. Today we have very much developed the IT industry and the PCs. So, but this case study is slightly old, but just to make you understand, I'm trying to repeat this. Okay, now things are changing, as you can see. From those days, IBM has now changed to world class, okay, and the one of the best organizations. So you can see that how they have tried to manage change, and they changed dynamics that they used of building and buying the computers, and that opened the door, for the wide sort of a set of activities and business. And 10 years ago, some change took place, and so meanwhile, IBM found that they have to make change, and this is the way they have gone about making the change. At this point, I'll just go slightly faster. Okay, we'll just, because we have to close. And so the IBM finally faced the competitors. You can see here. And then finally it became an effective organization, using the strategies of management of change. Now, from management of change, we are going to discuss the organization development and management development strategies, which we'll take up for our next discussion.